Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lighthouse Sessions. I have my new friend Sharon with me today. Sharon, why don't you introduce yourself just a little bit and then tell my audience who you are and what you do?
Thank you, Jeff. It's really lovely to be here with you. Really enjoying this conversation already. So I am a cognitive psychologist and the co-founder of Joyous Public Benefits Corporation. And Joyous Public Benefits Corp, we can just call it Joyous from now on.
Yeah, let's just call it Joyous.
We could be considered by some metrics, the largest psychedelic company ever. We've treated now over 86,000 people with a unique protocol of microdose ketamine. And there are many reasons that we are doing microdose ketamine. One of them is that ketamine in itself is, first of all, the only legal psychedelic medicine in the United States. And of course, we want to be a legal entity, but also does really carry some unique properties that are really beneficial to mental health in terms of anxiety, depression, PTSD. Happy to get into that cognitive mechanism or not,
Yes.
but I hope we do. Regardless, it is a very, very potent medicine. And the results we're seeing, which we're actually publishing with Canada, I was going to tell you, our research team that we're collaborating with is at U Alberta and UCal, I think. Yeah, so that's cool.
U Alberta is way better than UFC. Sorry.
Sure, of course.
There's a rivalry here between the two cities, but anyways.
Legit. So it is a very, very effective approach. The microdose piece of things is also very much intentional. Some of the reasons there are the psychedelic experience can be a beautiful experience. It can be a transformative experience. Some of the academic terms used around that are epistemically transformative, and that just means it can change the way you view the world.
Yeah.
And that can be wonderful, or it can be too much to handle. Like, that is not right. You had something to say.
I was going to say, so sorry, this is going to be a warning to everybody. If you're overstimulated, take a downer, because we're about to get high on this topic. But I know a lot of people who are going to Mexico and they're taking those weekend ayahuasca or whatever retreats.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a friend who deals with trauma and healing, and he's a psychologist.
Yeah.
And he keeps telling people, if you don't have the foundational ability, he talks about building the logical container. And he said the problem is, if you reset, it's kind of like you re-experience all of your trauma at once, and it might feel really good while you're there, but then you come home and all of that stuff is unpacked. And it's like, you put it in storage for a reason.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So that's exactly right. Not having the right container, not having enough literacy around, appropriate mental health behaviors internally, not having the right support system in terms of a therapist or like the right community can really leave people flailing.
Yeah.
And so we saw many ketamine companies emerge who were doing the high dose stuff, often with, psychedelically naive individuals, sending home these large doses and then telling them to train a sitter who, like, maybe the very family member who's triggering them, it's complicated. It's complicated. And it seems like it works very well for many people, but we weren't sure that it works well for everybody. And so the idea was, let's do a gentler, more gradual approach. The go low, go slow is one of our, internal slogans here. And what it does is allows people to take a more skill building approach than a more insight-based, like, transformative journey. But over time, the results we're seeing are, I want to be careful with my scientific language, because we're going to be publishing a chart review, which is just a naturalistic study of 85,000 people. It's not a randomized control trial, which, like, for good reasons, that's the gold standard. We're a company. We haven't had the money to do that. We're trying to do something like that for PTSD right now, actually in Israel, which is a whole that's a whole region of the world where everyone could use some PTSD treatment.
Yeah.
But we don't have that data yet. So I want to be careful to say this is as good or better than the higher dose ketamine, because we can't compare apples to oranges in terms of the studies, but the results we're seeing are very, very good. Seemingly better than SSRIs, seemingly better than the higher dose ketamine. But again, with that scientific caveat, because I want to be transparent.
And I think that's the fundamental, unfortunately, I think acid got a really bad reputation when, again, anything taken recreationally, and good luck with that.
Yeah.
That's going to leave some marks. Whereas I want to stress that you're focusing on legal and microdosing. And, it is a fascinating, and by the way, this is one of my weird hobbies is I study this stuff because I'm one of those people. I have autism and ADHD, and if I need to do something, I just do it. And literally, I'm not kidding, I only recently realized that most people, if their nervous system is not regulated, they won't do what they're supposed to do, even if they know they should do it, because they don't want the pain of having done it. And I always looked at people, and I'm going to be honest, I'm not the most sensitive. It's like, suck it up. If you need to do something, do it.
Yeah.
And now I'm looking at it going, oh, if they haven't done the mindset work first, they can't do the other stuff. And, I look at a friend of mine is actually studying New Year's resolutions, and he's tying it to dopamine deficiencies and things like that. But again, it's people haven't faced their trauma. Therefore, the external activities aren't matching the internal script.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. So, you brought in not just the mindset piece, which is the more cognitive, the more, the appraisal of thoughts, the beliefs that it can be examined with the right spaciousness, but also I believe in your last statement there, you kind of brought in the body too.
Yeah.
And that's really where ketamine shines. It's by giving the individual space, because it's a dissociative anesthetic. So at these low doses, you can call it partial dissociation. It gives you a sense of spaciousness in your body where you can start to relate to the nervous system sensations that, as you were just saying, people who haven't dealt with a trauma or can be in this triggered state, and it prevents them from reevaluating their cognitive relationships. They're the ways that they think, the ways that they believe, and like the lenses that places on their world.
Now, I'm going to ask you a really weird question, but is my brain, I know ketamine and the psychedelics, but my brain wants to say it was used for in veterinary as a horse tranquilizer. Am I right?
You are right. That's one of its reputations for sure. Animal tranquilizer for sure.
Okay.
And not child tranquilizer too. Like, it's one of the most common medications used in pediatric surgery for humans, because it is a very safe medication.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, when used correctly.
When used correctly.
we don't want to start a run where everybody goes to the vets to get some ketamine.
No. Yeah. And we know that it can be misused, without a doubt. There is a ketamine addiction is unfortunately on the rise, but not in clinical settings and not doses that we're prescribing. I think, it's not a perfect analogy because they just work so differently in the brain, but what we're prescribing is like the equivalent of a glass of wine a day. That's not how you become an alcoholic, Yeah.
Not a bottle, but a glass, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, a friend of mine heard red wine helps with heart disease, and so she was drinking a bottle a day, and I'm like, I think it's in moderation.
Right? No, not that much. Yeah, there are other damages that come out from that.
Yeah, let's talk about liver. Now, okay, so this is new to me that this is becoming, or there's a possibility for addiction. So let's talk the dark side before we get into how it helps. But so again, I'm naive here. Is there actually a street value for ketamine, and people are buying it to disassociate and lose reality for a bit?
Yeah, it is a pleasant experience, and it's become a more and more common party drug.
Really?
It really has. It's a pleasant experience in that it does, in the lower doses, give you some space from, your normal experience. In the higher doses, there's what's known as a K-hole, and a K-hole is it's a double-edged sword. Like it is an ego death. Generally, it is a
Yeah.
deeply psychedelic space that you cannot possibly come out of. Those are the times where we want to make sure that you have like medical support in the room and you're not going to asphyxiate on vomit because you can't necessarily move. At the same time, some people describe the K-hole as a deeply spiritual experience, like an ecstatic, mystical, a very healing experience. So I'm definitely not here to poop on the K-hole. I just think it needs to be done responsibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully with
It's like a car, it's not the car that's good or bad. It's the driver and what you do with it. And by the way, we'll talk about the death of ego, because to me that I'm fascinated by it. I have had a lot of friends who've experimented and experienced it, but again, every one of them had a trained guide in the room bringing them back.
Yeah. Yes, that seems like the wise way to do it.
Yeah, because one guy said it best. He said it was like meeting God and understanding all your flaws at once. Like it was just.
It's well said. Yeah.
But it was just, again, anything that is the death of the ego. You need more than just somebody with a medical background. You need somebody there to help you put the pieces back together. Because
absolutely, the Buddhists have, or at least some lineages of Buddhism have the concept of the cessation moment, and that is when the ego, it can pause out for a long time or even momentarily, but when you come back, there really is a sense of renewal. But what these lineages of Buddhism do is give the people a lot of framework and construct around what that means. So it's not this terrifying experience. It's put into context. It's explained that this is actually a beautiful reset. It is meeting God, right? And it is perhaps gaining some new lenses on your flaws, as your friend so beautifully put. And so to have the right framework around it, the right understanding, and someone to help you make sense of anything that is troubling or destabilizing is the responsible way to go about, and the wise way to go about it.
Well, it's funny because I've heard people say, well, the indigenous peoples, the Native Americans used to do this. And it's like, yes. And they had a ceremony for it.
They had a ceremony. They had a shaman who dedicated his or her life to understanding these medicines and how they work with the soul and the psyche. And they didn't just like,
hey, let's try this.
Right. Right.
Well, and again, I have a funny feeling that dosage is fairly relevant. And, I've actually heard of instances where people went to Mexico. Seems to be a popular place because pretty much anything goes there, and people overdose, people die. I've known a couple of people who lost all touch of reality and they couldn't reintegrate. And I think that's the piece that I think is critical, is having that container you can integrate in and come back to.
Yeah, the support, the container, the sense making, the meaning making, the soothing of whatever was too much to handle. Yeah, so actually on that note, I mean, it's worth mentioning we're now putting out this therapist collaboration program it's the first of its kind certificate training program, because there are several psychedelic assisted therapy training programs and institutions out there, many for ketamine exclusively, because again, it is, the most legal one across the entire state population. But there are some states, Colorado, Oregon. I know you're in Canada, and I'm not as well acquainted with your laws, but some states do have permissions for psilocybin. So there are various psychedelic training programs, but very few, zero other than ours, what's known as psycholytic, which is another word for kind of the microdose experience. So we put that, yeah.
So who would take that course? What's that person sitting at their desk today going, I'm missing this in my life? How would they know they need that course?
So I think the person who wants to take this course is a therapist who wants to, turbo boost their skills and their ability to make an impact on their clients' lives. Because essentially what we're teaching them is that, yes, there are some additional considerations for sure. Your patient or your client, they use the word client, not patient. It's medical patient, therapy client. Your client is coming in, more vulnerable and more open. It's kind of like any other depth approach. You're doing hypnosis, you have a vulnerable client. You're doing EMDR, you have a more vulnerable client. You're regressing them to, like self from IFS or somatic experiencing, you have a more vulnerable client. You're doing depth work. Same goes for psycholytic work, but on the whole, this is a very low risk approach. It's not riskier than EMDR or hypnotherapy. The medical and psychiatric emergency rates are negligible. Like we just haven't seen them, 85,000 people. And what you're getting is a client who's coming in more open, less defensive, in both like in the behavioral sense and like in the classical, psychoanalytic, psychological defense way. Like a lot of that just drops, and they're able to be really present, front and center with the emotionality, with the stories, with the memories, with the nervous system sensations that can usually be too overwhelming to work with. And so you don't need a different office space, because this is not psychedelic therapy where they need to lie down with their eye shades and
the 4-hour treatment.
Correct. This is not it. It fits into your hour slot that you usually have with your client. They're coming in the session. I love this quote. My best friend's a psychiatrist who went to the psychedelic science conference in I think 23 or 22. And she came back and said, yeah, there was this couples therapy session done on psycholytic ketamine, and it was kind of boring to watch. It was just like a regular therapy session. It was just going well. So that's it. You're basically just getting a client who's more receptive, more fertile to do the deep work that you guys already want to be doing.
So and you're not triggering that dramatic death. You're triggering a
just
calm.
More looseness. Psychedelic means mind manifesting. Yeah. Psycholytic means mind loosening.
Oh.
So it's like a lysis.
And I think with a lot of trauma therapy modalities, I assume, again, I'm not a therapist, so I can't speak to that, but I assume they're conscious of people's nervous systems and, the parasympathetic system and all that. Yeah. But I have a feeling that this helps get past a lot of the body resistance.
Completely. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Now, in terms of the patient, you've worked with 85,000. What are they coming in complaining about, and what are they leaving celebrating?
Totally. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, stress. Many people just coming in feeling burnt out by the world, by their jobs, by their 3 kids, people who have often been depressed or anxious for decades. And maybe SSRIs like Prozac, Prozac, Lexapro, Zoloft, maybe they've moved the needle, maybe they haven't. Typically the people for whom they move the needle and there's not a huge side effect profile, maybe they just stay there. Yeah. But people who come in who say, I haven't had an orgasm in a couple of years, I've gained 20 pounds, it makes me feel numb, I want to try something else, often find that ketamine does what Zoloft couldn't, and then they come off of their SSRI medications. That's definitely a profile that we see a lot of. Typically, a patient is with us between 5 and 10 months. That's kind of the range. Some people do stay longer. Some people need insulin daily. Some people might need mental health support daily. but the average patient does graduate, we call it. And typically they find that they have so much more spaciousness around the patterning that used to just make them feel stuck. So one thing I haven't mentioned is ketamine is just very neuroplastic. It really promotes the birth of what's known as dendrites. It's dendritogenesis, which is they're like the little fingers on the neuron cells that receive neurotransmitters. So when
so if somebody's correct me, but with the traditional treatments like Zoloft, aren't you just pushing everything down and hoping it doesn't explode?
That's what a lot of people describe. I'll be honest with you that like neuroscience and psychiatry doesn't quite know how any of this fully works. That's just
a whole different episode.
Yeah, that is a whole different episode. There is some evidence that SSRIs do cause neurogenesis, like the birth of brand new neurons, specifically, I believe, in parts of the hippocampus. So they have some mechanisms of action for sure. Something is happening. I think what's more likely is that we're going to get better at personalizing which SSRIs, if any, would work best for each individual. Because we do see all the time, like, okay, Zoloft does work for this person, but Prozac never did. But this one, Paxil makes a difference, but Zoloft was terrible. And, you know, and we don't know how to predict that very well now. We're getting better at it. What we're seeing with ketamine is 70+% of people who come in get a lot of benefits. And of the ones who don't, some of them just really don't tolerate the side effects. Some people they just don't like how it feels in the body. And okay, like that, you know, everyone's different. And for some smaller percentage, it just doesn't seem to move the needle. Again, everyone's different. But I think ketamine appears to be more non-specifically effective than any one of these antidepressants, which my understanding is any single one has about a 30% likelihood of working.
Yeah. Well, I have ADHD, so I've seen psychiatrists, and there's a phrase that always makes me run like hell. They say, "Let's try this and see how it goes." And I'm like, you know, I feel like, you know, this is science, this is chemistry. I feel like you should be able to draw blood somehow and say, okay, based on your DNA or whatever, here's the chance.
I think we're getting closer. And, you know, one of the things about AI that is most promising is probably medical personalization. That's one of the areas we don't have to feel too scared about. God, I hope. I'm sure we can mess up anything, but
yeah, it can be weaponized. Let's not go there, but but it amazes me that, you know, psychiatry has been around, you know, since the 40s, 50s, whenever, and it's still, you know, it's given a lot of credibility as a science, but there's a lot of, well, let's hope this works. You know, that you shouldn't have to cross your fingers. And I was given a medication. I took one pill. I can't remember what it was. And I was within 30 minutes trying to kill myself.
Oh my God.
And
wow.
I called the doctor and said, "What did you do to me?" And she's like, "Well, maybe cut the dosage in half." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's not."
No, that's not enough.
It was, and, you know, I said, if I'm going to do something stupid, it's because I chose to, not because some drug got in my head and stirred the pot. So,
to be fair to psychiatry, you know, like I was given a statin and a month later we found out it was like impacting my liver. So then I was giving another statin. Like there's a lot of, you know, there's just a lot of trial and error in all of medicine. We're still in some ways very much like cavemen with bats, like trying to make things better.
Let's hope this works. I think, you know, I had read a study, you know, people are saying, oh, AI isn't going to help medicine. And I read a study that they were able to locate breast cancer in patients up to 5 years earlier.
Wow.
And the risk was every once in a blue moon, there was a small percentage of false positives.
Okay.
Which meant somebody would go get a biopsy and then find out, oh, you don't have cancer. And the people who were trying to prevent cancer took it the wrong way because they're saying, well, a false positive causes undue stress. And it's like, yes, but 99.9999% of the time, they're detecting actual cancer 5 years earlier. That to me is a win.
That is pretty cool.
You know, it was like like they could see the pre-tumor cells forming.
Wow. Yeah. A lot to be hopeful about, especially in the realm of cancer, for sure.
Yeah, and I think with mental health, you know, right now, and you know, there's been some cases where people don't have mental health and they go use AI, and then they, you know, how do I kill myself? How do I kill others? You know, that's
right.
A human
flaw,
not the AI. I mean, obviously you put guardrails in, but so you've worked with 85,000 people. I believe some states ketamine's still not legal. Am I correct?
No. Yeah, no, that's it is Schedule 3 in the DEA, which actually makes it like less regulated than Adderall. Adderall is Schedule 2. So it is legally available in all 50 states. However, the telehealth landscape is different state by state for controlled substances. So we're only active, I believe, in 28 states. And some states are like too small and we haven't found the right provider there, so we're not active there too. But that's the reason we're not active in every single US state.
I love it. Now, is Hawaii on that list?
Hawaii is not on the list. And I have some cousins there, and I have some. I
have a friend who's a therapist there, and she does a lot of inner child and the tapping and IMDR, and I feel like this would be right up her alley.
Yeah. Completely. I hope we get there. I don't know if it's a regulatory issue or a provider issue. I love Hawaii.
Okay, I'll put my network to work. Let's see what we can do. Because the reason I ask is I know there were some issues with the state of Nevada, and the governor was looking at ketamine, and I didn't follow up to see if it went through or not. But
okay, I know we're still active in Nevada. Thanks for letting me know. We can check in on that. I'm sure the medical team is on it. Yeah,
I will connect you with my friend there. So what do you wish people knew about, you know, again, we've talked a lot about ketamine, but let's talk about, you know, the entire wellness side of it, the mental health aspect. What do you wish people were asking or knew about?
I wish people knew about the importance of what you do with the time on the medicine. And it's an interesting thing to say, because our data suggests that whether or not they're doing anything particularly therapeutic with their time on the medicine, which is about 40 minutes, 45 to 60 minutes for some long tailors, regardless of what they're doing, they appear to be getting better. But it is my deep belief, and again, this is not a scientific statement because we haven't studied it, but my deep belief based on the people I've spoken to is the ones who take the time to assign that period of psychoactive medication to self-reflection, to journaling, to meditating, to working on fostering of positive emotionality, to working through, you know, some beliefs, or to taking it into their therapy. Again, with our therapist collaboration program, I genuinely believe what you do with your time of neuroplasticity matters a lot. And so the ones who are with us and making that commitment to be intentional with the time, I believe are much more likely to graduate from the program and have new mental habits in place.
I love that phrase because, first of all, I'm a big fan of James Clear and his book, Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people who want the pill to treat the symptom, and they don't address the underlying condition. And I feel like if you're going to the trouble of getting prescription and getting, you know, help with this, you should want to get the most out of it.
Use your time wisely. Yeah, you should.
Now, I don't know if you're allowed to answer this, but have you worked with people in addiction? Because one of the things I'm obsessed with, again, not a scientist, but I believe that there's a tie-in and a correlation between addiction and dopamine deficiency.
Absolutely. That's demonstrated in the science. You're right on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yes, I understand weird things like I could talk to you about alleles and DNA markers. A friend of mine's actually doing some research. They're in, I'm going to call it the pre-scientific phase, where he's got the theory and he's looking for the data to support it.
Yeah.
But he believes that a lot of addiction can be tied to, I think it's the DRD4. So
DRD4. Yeah.
I end up saying R2D2, and he laughs at me, and I'm like, oh, sorry, that's different.
Receptor D4. Yeah.
Yeah, D4, D2, or something like that. And it fascinates me because a lot of people want to say, well, where's the proof? And it's like, but again, we're now exploring that proof.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's fascinating if we can get to the DNA of it. I believe, and this is my approach, there are people whose brains are wired differently. They're predisposed to addiction because they have dopamine deficiency. And I'm one of those people. The executive function works differently in me than in regular people. I think there's a lot of really cool science that can come of this.
Totally. I would just add, like, it's generally a bit more nuanced than just deficiency. Like, it could be abnormalities in wiring. It could be like downregulation of receptor. Like, it's such a complex system. There could be so many variances from normative that underlie, the propensity to addiction. But like 100%, you're right. It's very much dopaminergic. I didn't remember if it was DRD4, DRD2, but I trust you on that. It sounds like you've done the research.
It's one of those.
Yeah. But yeah, no, without a doubt. So the question was, do we work with people who have addiction?
Yeah.
And that is a very interesting question. There is some research suggesting that ketamine can help people come off of opioids. It can help people with alcohol addiction. Do we work with that as a telehealth service? We do not. We decided that is a high acuity state, and that while ketamine can be extremely helpful, the ethical thing to do is to take people who have a vulnerability toward addiction and make sure that they have a more hand-holding kind of psychiatric situation. Of course, there's the question there of like, well, what if they don't find it? What if they don't find the psychiatrist locally who's willing to work with them, which is, entirely possible. But we still think that it would not be a service to higher acuity patients for us to take them on over telehealth.
So it's almost a high stakes emergency rather than, it's again with addiction, and I'm sure it's everywhere, but in Edmonton, we've got a massive opioid addiction crisis. And I would not want those people being given medication without supervision. And
I think that's right.
I have a friend who runs a alcohol and drug addiction rehab facility. They need, again, there's a medical, you've got doctors and nurses on staff because, people are going through withdrawal and they're extreme.
They're in pain. Yeah, it's horrible.
Now, you work with PTSD. So is that, again, still telehealth, or are you getting into more?
It is still telehealth. It could be argued if that's higher acuity for sure. If people present with suicidality, like active suicidality, many of our patients have more passive suicidality, thoughts, wishes, but not plan, not intent. That's too high acuity for us too. They need more immediate high level care. But people with PTSD who are in the moderate range, we will work with them. We just believe that we don't want to be the enemy of, the good. It's a really helpful protocol. It's a really potent medicine. We hope and we encourage them to find therapists to work with alongside. About half of our patients already have therapists, it's like 48% when we last checked. And we are now, through this therapist collaboration program, we're putting out a directory too of folks that we can trust, at least have the knowledge. They did the certificate program, and we believe, are going to be well equipped to work with individuals with PTSD. So we'll be able to offer that to our patient base very soon and really encourage that therapy. But part of the program is that and I should have said this earlier, but this is the most affordable
Oh,
ketamine
yes.
treatment. It's $129 a month. And there's nothing as affordable as that in the US as far as we know. And so we do get many people for whom that's like a financial stretch. Like, yes, this is what I'm doing for my mental health this month, $129, and that means they don't have the funds for a therapist.
Yeah.
Therapists deserve to be paid. And so we're just trying to like do the best within an imperfect system.
So a couple of thoughts swirling in my brain. Number one, you offer training for therapists. So would it be fair to say the therapists you're training, they're going to be in the community, sort of bricks and mortar therapists, where they can do more of that high risk work?
Okay. Yeah, many of them work over telehealth, but I think still that one-on-one connection is what we're interested in. Yeah.
Because it fascinates me that what I've seen, especially with the dopamine receptors, they're equally likely, it is true bell curve, they're equally likely to be the absolute top of their community. They are highly successful, highly driven. Their addiction is work. On the other end of the curve, they're homeless, they're on the streets, their drug addiction, alcoholism, and things like that. I think it would be amazing to see more clinicians who are trained in different techniques, because I have my very real biases against talk therapy. It's like, it's not really that helpful unless you're changing something. You just keep playing the same record, you're going to get the same song.
Yeah. I think many people do feel like they have reached a plateau in therapy, and many therapists have told us this has helped break through plateaus. It's bringing in a new landscape, a new like internal environment that allows us to work in ways we haven't before. So I totally sign on to what you're saying. Yeah.
I love it. And I just see the leverage of it. So if somebody wants to get to know you or find out Joyous, where do they go? How do they learn about the training that you do?
Awesome. So it's joyous.team for patients, joyous.team/therapy for therapists. And if you just want to read my various musings, I'm starting to write a bit more, and it's SharonNiv.substack.com, and I'm sure you'll have it in the notes. So SharonNiv at Substack or .substack.
Love it. Now, I'm going to come back. You mentioned that you're doing some work with PTSD in Israel.
Yeah.
Why there? Why now? How did that come about? Yeah.
Well, so much of our co-founding team is Israeli, so we do have relationships with it's a small country. So like if you have relationships with some head psychiatrist because you went to high school with them, that opens up some doors to doing some work. And I mean, I think the truth is we are a PBC and we're all heartbroken about what's going on in the Middle East. And, the neighbors deserve and need this treatment just as much, if not more. I mean, I think the trauma is considerable. The whole region is traumatized, but I think
there's generational trauma there for sure. Multi-generational, sorry.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, the country was founded, in the aftermath of the Holocaust and expulsion of Jews from Arabic countries. Yeah. They never healed that. And then they continued. And now there's trauma, immense trauma being perpetuated on the neighbors too. Yeah. It is horrifying. And so we in an ideal world would love to provide this treatment into the entire Middle East, but it was the easiest and most available to start in Israel because there are connections there. And we found a research team who's interested in doing a randomized controlled trial, which for your audience is considered like the gold standard of doing good clinical research on a PTSD population. So
I have a feeling that there'd be a big branch of the Israeli government that would be really interested in that work because they spend a lot of money on their military, and unfortunately the equipment's only as good as the operators, and when they have PTSD, it's a problem.
Yeah, and yeah, for sure. And there's also the angle that it's a civilian military, like and probably fewer people going than ever, various like accommodations, but let's say 70 to 80% of the 18 to 21-year-olds are in the military, and then they go home to their families and their partners. And so, yes, there's a lot of interest in PTSD treatment in Israel for sure. And because it's a nationalized healthcare system, the hope would be if we demonstrate, the value there, maybe we could really get it spread out to the population. That's the hope.
I love it. Well, Sharon, thank you for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And you will be back if it serves you, but I want to thank you for being on the show.
I had such a good time talking with you, Jeff. Really enjoyed it today. Thank you.